This podcast is supported by family history website Find My Past. What was life like for domestic servants, workers and local communities at our most fascinating heritage sites? Uncover the hidden history and buried secrets of people from all walks of life connected with National Trust places and whose stories illuminate our past and present. Discover where they lived and worked and who with in hundreds of census records from National Trust spaces for free. And find out how to explore your family's history. See where the past takes you at findmypast.co.uk/national-trust. The following episode of the National Trust podcast includes fictional dramatisations inspired by real historical events. Hello and welcome to a special episode of the National Trust podcast, where not all is as it appears. Blink twice and things that seem real may suddenly disappear. Dark deeds have been committed, and for one night only on All Hallows Eve, we've been given the gift of seeing beyond the earthly realm as the veils of the spiritual world separate to speak to those that witness them. I'm James Grasby, and today we are going to find a murderer. I've come to Corfe Castle in Dorset, a dramatic landscape of atmospheric ruins filled with thousands of years of history encased between the rolling Purbeck Hills. With its fallen walls and secret places, there are tales of treachery and treason around every corner. And it's amongst this enigmatic and eerie landscape, in the late afternoon of March the 18th, AD 978, that a murder of a 16-year-old boy was committed. As far as we know, no one was charged or convicted or even arrested for the murder. So I've arranged to meet Anna Groves, author and historian, to see if we can piece together what happened.
Hi James, lovely to meet you.
A pleasure to meet you.
That 16-year-old boy was a young king who was brutally stabbed in the back and died shortly after. His name was King Edward, although you may know him as Edward the Martyr. As with so much from that era, history was passed down by word of mouth, and so we don't have any detailed factual accounts of what happened or who killed him. What we do have are multiple theories written centuries later. Some contradict each other, casting blame on different people. But which one tells the truth about the murder of King Edward?
Anna, what an imposing and perversely beautiful setting for such a very dark story.
It really is. These glorious stone ruins actually date back to 1065, when William the Conqueror transformed it into a Norman stone castle. In King Edward's time, it was a Saxon stronghold where a wooden royal castle stood.
Now, Anna, today it's Halloween, the spookiest night of the year, where the undead walk amongst us, and we're going to try and make contact with those that witness this tragic event. And you've just written a book on the resident ghosts of the National Trust, so I'm hoping you're going to know how to find them.
I have. It's rare for you to see a physical apparition, and you may just be aware of a presence or feel a bit colder. So just keep an open mind and be curious, and let's see what we find.
So, what happened on the day King Edward was murdered?
We know that on March 18th, 978 AD, King Edward had travelled to spend the day out hunting with his attendants. He got separated and then decided to pay his widowed stepmother, Queen Elfrida, and his 7-year-old stepbrother, Ethelred, a visit here at their home in Corfe. Edward rode his horse up this steep pathway leading to the keep, which is a fortified tower, and likely to have been the entrance in AD 978.
In front of us, the keep rises, a monumental keep rises into the sky. Behind us is the town, the long path leading down to it. Anna, let's head to where you think the murder took place and see what we can find.
OK, so we're here at the southwest gatehouse.
We've climbed this steep path. This is the outer bailey of the castle, the outer ward. In front of us, 2 enormous towers with a central gateway. You're saying it was on this spot? that Edward spent his last moments alive?
Absolutely, yes. He was stabbed here, in the back, and then his bloodied body found at the bottom of this hill.
King Edward was well liked, so this must have been a great shock for everyone.
Absolutely. Although there wasn't a lot of confidence in him at the start, he'd been ruling for 3 years by this point and was generally popular.
Is it me, or is the sky darkening? It's definitely feeling cooler.
I think we're about to meet our first ghost witness.
Come on! Come on! Nelder, you have to stop. Your hands will be raw. Stop! I cannot stop the Queen. She's in such a state. I do not want her to see this. I do not want her to walk on his blood. Nelder. The poor King. Struck. Just here. I cannot have the Queen seeing this every day. Who struck him? I do not know. I was in the kitchen preparing Queen Elfrida and Master Ethelred's supper when the King had arrived unexpectedly. I am surprised she did not send him on his way. He was so rude to her in their last meeting. A page came into the kitchen and asked for wine, and the next thing I heard was the Queen crying that the King had been stabbed. I heard he arrived unaccompanied and was attacked on his horse. Yes. You see the blood? There. That is where he fell off his horse and was dragged away. People are out there looking for him now. Some say he is still alive and gone to start a new life, abandoned his country. Others say he is dead, and his body is strewn across the Purbeck Hills. I need to finish this. Oh, I do not want the Queen to walk through it.
It is quite a transition. You'll get used to it. There was a woman scrubbing obsessively on the flagstones. It's what we call an imprint ghost, where something that's happened before just keeps repeating in time. It's like the ghosts are imprinted on the air. A lot of the time you find a ghost stuck in a moment like this one. She spoke about King Edward and his relationship with his stepmother, Elfrida. There was clearly friction there.
The different accounts of the murder written years later all have the same version of the murder itself, that King Edward was hunting nearby when he got separated from his hunting party and decided to stop here to see his younger half-brother Ethelred. He was given a drink, as was customary for guests on arrival, and the next thing, he was stabbed.
So the drink could have contained poison, or just been a distraction so the murderer could stab him in the back without giving him the chance to defend himself. Right, let's head to where the body was found. It was in a well over this way, down this slope.
I also don't quite understand why Edward was alone. I mean, it seems odd for a king to be riding solo. Was that set up for the murder like a trap?
Could be.
I feel cold again, and the atmosphere feels different somehow, more urgent.
Did you see the size of that stag? I would say that's the biggest we've seen all year.
I cannot believe you lost him.
Me? I was pushing him towards you.
Well, you were going in the wrong direction if that's what you were doing.
No, I went east. I thought he was catching up with you.
So you lost the stag and you lost the king.
Come on, we need to find him. We cannot return to the castle without the king. This way!
They would have been the king's attendants. They were panicking. They'd lost him.
If they're trying to find him, they didn't murder him.
Indeed. So let's continue down to the well and see if there's anything there. There's no longer a stone well at Corfe Castle, but this deep impression in the ground here is where it would have been.
And it's really quite a large depression in the ground. I mean, it's 20 feet across, 6 feet deep. And the grass is very different in this area. In fact, it's quite different to grass elsewhere on the site. That's odd.
And there may be a reason for that, but not a terrestrial one. There's a legend that Edward's body wasn't found for a full year and only found when a ray of light was illuminating out of this well where the body was dumped. And it's thought that the water in the well here had healing properties.
Anna, it feels that there's not much more here to help us, though.
Well, let's carry on down this way. There's a church in the village that's named after King Edward, and it has a graveyard. so a perfect place to find a ghost who might have more to say.
Anna, it really is a very picturesque village, isn't it? With these quaint stone buildings, with a backdrop of the green Purbeck Hills behind, and that imposing castle watching over us. And it's really just a short walk that we've made from the centre, and we're now here in front of this great grey stone church.
Yes, this is St Edward King and Martyr Church. Can you see that stone statue on top of the roof there?
Yes, I can, at the pinnacle of that gable end. It's quite small, but it's clearly a figure of a man wearing a crown and a cloak, and he's got a halo behind his head, I think. And underneath, oh look, there's the inscription, St Edward.
After his death, he became known as Edward the Martyr. His status as a saint was induced by the miracles that were said to have occurred at his tomb. And this church here is the site of one of those miracles.
Let's go in. It's an imposing church, isn't it? With these great Purbeck stone columns going up, rising up to a huge wooden ceiling, the stained glass windows, multicoloured. A very imposing, impressive altar. And it says here that this has been a place of worship since the 11th or the 12th century. I can believe it, it feels ancient. But how is it connected to King Edward?
After King Edward was slain, his body was found and brought here, although then it was a house where a blind woman lived and not yet a church. So the body was covered to keep it safe from discovery, but at midnight, the room was filled with a celestial light, and suddenly, miraculously, the blind woman regained her sight. Then the murderers realised the blind woman would now be able to see and recognise the body of King Edward, and so the body had to be moved.
So that's when they put it in the well?
I believe so.
So the blind woman would have seen the murderers?
Most likely, but nothing was recorded. What is interesting, though, is that the house she lived in was owned by Edward's stepmother, Queen Elfrida. So either Elfrida was at the centre of this, or someone wanted to make it look that way.
This doesn't feel like a spontaneous crime, does it? Multiple hands were at play here, but why? Who had the most to gain from Edward's demise? Anna, I feel like we're making progress. Just recap for me what we know so far.
Okay, so Edward came to visit his half-brother, Ethelred, and stepmother Elfrida after getting separated from his attendants whilst he was out hunting. On his arrival, he was given a drink and then fatally stabbed in the back.
Or was injured and bled to death after being dragged by his horse.
Right. Either way, brutal and very painful. After he died, he was taken to the blind woman's house to be hidden and then moved to the well where he was eventually found.
It feels planned.
Yes, we need to look at the people around Edward. So let's head back to the castle.
We're back in Corfe. We've come back to where our journey started at the outer gatehouse. Having walked over that extraordinary cobblestone bridge, we're now standing under this enormous and imposing stone gateway with two huge towers to either side.
This was in effect the castle's front door and always the weakest point in its defences, so consequently it was very well protected.
So it would have had this strong gate to stop people entering the castle.
That was the Norman castle, and it wouldn't have been like this in King Edward's day. The Saxon stronghold wouldn't have had such defences.
Okay.
Wait, there's someone here.
I feel it too, but it feels angry this time. I don't know if we should be here.
Rowena, stop!
Not now, Elwyn. We need to bring him home.
You cannot go in there. If the Queen sees you, just wait, Rowena.
Elwyn, we need to get our son and bring him home. I do not want him involved in this.
I know, but you cannot just go in there.
That family is cursed. I do not want our boy around them anymore.
He will come home tonight, and then we will find another job for him.
It's her. She is poison. Look at everything that has happened. First her husband, then King Edgar, and now this. Her hands are red with blood.
Keep your voice down.
This is not the first time she wanted the throne for Ethelred.
He's 7 years of age.
Ethelred, her most beloved son. She would do anything for him.
Not murder.
I believe it. And I do not want my son working in her kitchen anymore.
Rowena, wait!
That dark feeling has lifted. Was it another ghost stuck in a moment? The air felt so charged.
Actually, it was two ghosts, a mother and a father, trying to get to their son. But they reminded me of some interesting points. Queen Elfrida and King Edgar were both married before, and some say Edgar arranged for Elfrida's first husband to be assassinated so he could make her his queen, and some suggest Elfrida was involved in that.
I think we need to try and find Elfrida.
And I think I know just the place to do so.
I'm starting to get the impression that Queen Elfrida may not have been as virtuous as we first thought, Anna. We heard about a new character, King Edgar, Queen Elfrida's second husband, who ruled England from 959 to 975 AD. We know that her first husband died under suspicious circumstances, and that King Edgar and Queen Elfrida may have been involved. We also know that Queen Elfrida is the stepmother to the murdered King Edward and the biological mother of 7-year-old Ethelred. What we haven't touched on, but those last ghosts hinted at, is King Edgar's death 3 years earlier in 975 AD. Edward, his first son from his first marriage, was crowned the new king. But not everyone was happy with that. I'm starting to wonder if Queen Elfrida might have harboured some resentment at that time, especially since she was so eager for her own son, Ethelred, to be crowned instead. It would make sense for Elfrida to try and get Edward out of the picture, so Ethelred could be king, even if he was only 7 years old. Or someone used that as a cover to murder Edward and frame Elfrida.
We've driven about an hour and a half from Corfe Castle northeast into the county of Hampshire, and have just arrived in a very picturesque village of Warewell, and are now heading towards a very attractive church, brick and flint, tile, a spire, pointing up into the heavens, in a very tranquil and lovely setting, alive with bells.
This is the Church of St. Peter and the Holy Cross, and next to it would have been the site of Warewell Abbey, which Queen Elfrida founded, becoming its first abbess. So in the vestry of this church are some of the original tiles that were first laid in Warewell Abbey. Queen Elfrida died here on 17th of November, 1002, so there's hope, if her ghost walks anywhere, it might be here.
Lead the way. So we've entered from a south door, now coming into the nave, which is not as I was expecting at all. This is a high Victorian Gothic church, isn't it? Beautifully made, with these lovely drum columns, Gothic capitals, pointed arches, a wonderful oak roof in that sort of hammer beam style, I suppose, with Victorian tiles going up the vestry. But this doesn't strike me as being a particularly ancient place.
Well, of course you're right. Victorian is what it is. But according to the church's history, the tiles were moved here from Warewell Abbey when the abbey was destroyed in the 1540s, like so many other religious institutions. And if we have a look through here, go through the curtains.
So you're leading me into a little anteroom, really, off the choir of the church.
Here in the vestry, we can see these tiles.
Wow, I'm just going to kneel down and have a proper look at these in this half-light. Tiles in lovely, rich terracotta and earth colours. And my goodness, over here, mythical creatures, star motifs, eagles.
James, I hate to stop you, but over there in the pews, there's a woman. She seems to be praying for forgiveness.
To sin no more and to avoid whatever leads me to sin.
My queen.
Hail, Father?
Please, my queen. Come away from here now. You've been praying day and night. You need rest.
Thank you, Father, but I am quite comfortable. My God, I'm sorry for my sins with all my heart, in choosing to do wrong and failing to do good. I sinned against you.
Anna, is it Elfrida?
Yes, it is.
Is she praying forgiveness for the murder?
I'm afraid she's not being that specific. but it appears she's been praying for a long time, so it must be something serious. She does seem very penitent.
What a moment for her ghost to be stuck in. Maybe she didn't get the forgiveness she asked for. It doesn't look good for Queen Elfrida. But how did she die?
She fell into the river just in front of the abbey and drowned.
What a terrible way to go.
As All Hallows Eve started to wane, and with only a few moments left until the veil to the ghostly world closes tighter for another year, Anna and I returned to Corfe Castle to see if we could find anyone else who could confirm our suspicions that Elfrida was at the centre of this brutal murder. But we found nothing more. Feeling a little dejected, I decided to look back at the written accounts, reading them with the knowledge we'd gained in Corfe. One account that stood out to me now was written by William of Malmesbury, a Norman writer, which explains that even though Edward treated his stepmother with proper warmth of feeling, the woman, however, with a stepmother's hatred
and a viper's guile, in her anxiety that her son should also enjoy the title of king, laid plots against her stepson's life. On his arrival, his stepmother, with a woman's wiles, distracted his attention, and with a kiss of welcome offered him a drink. As he greedily drank it, she had him pierced with a dagger by one of her servants.
Elfrida's behaviour in later years seemed to echo that of a guilty person. She became extremely penitent, abdicating and retiring to Warewell Abbey, spending her final days in quiet solitude, although that isn't sufficient evidence to convict her. And that's an important aspect of this story. No one was convicted of the crime. And so do I think Elfrida was directly involved in King Edward's murder? I believe so. You might have guessed by now that Ethelred was crowned king. Actually, you've probably heard of him, Ethelred the Unready, meaning poorly advised. And while poor Edward was initially buried without ceremony in a grave near Wareham, his body was moved a year later to a prominent position in Shaftesbury Abbey, where he finally received the royal burial he deserved. In fact, he was even recognised as a saint.
Above all things, I firmly intend with your help to do penance, to sin no more and to avoid whatever leads me to sin.
Thank you for listening to this Halloween episode of the National Trust podcast. If you're intrigued to learn more about the ghosts that haunt the National Trust and where you can try to encounter them, you can buy Anna Groves's book, Britain's Ghosts, from the link in our episode notes. For now, from me, James Grasby, goodbye. This podcast is supported by family history website Find My Past. Unearth untold stories and secrets of real people who once walked the historical places now under the National Trust's care. Discover how they lived and worked and who with in hundreds of census records for free. And find out how to explore your family history. See where the past takes you at findmypast.co.uk/national-trust.